next to me is Don Paul. Don's been in Walton County for 17 years, 20 years. Been in banking forever. We have Gene Rollins, Michelle Beasley, Anita Smith, Linda Bling, and Betsy Jordan. And we were adding it up the other day, we've got over 100 years of banking in Walton County, just in this group. So we're here and we're your neighbors, and we're glad to have an opportunity to sponsor the chamber. Thank you very much.
We are going to start with our post-legislative update, and we're going to start with Representative Bruce Williamson. Representative Williamson is a native of Walton County. He's a businessman, served as our state representative for 3 years, and he currently serves as vice chair of the banking committee and also serves on the insurance, governmental affairs, and the ways and means committees. Please help me welcome Representative Bruce Williamson.
I too want to thank our sponsors today, Dee Dee, and whoever's representing Comcast here. Thank you for this wonderful luncheon and providing this opportunity and also to the board members present. So glad to be here today. We're going to bring you a quick overview of what's going on during this legislative session. First of all, my apologies. Senator Bill Calvert's going to be running a little bit late. He is the senior member of our delegation, and normally he would lead the charge. I've only been in the legislature for 3 years, but I'm the de facto next most senior member, and got to have to go first. So real quickly, what we're going to do, we're going to break down what we feel like is the highlights. Each one of us is just going to take certain segments that we thought were important and maybe of interest to you. And Bill will be in a little bit later, and he will come last this year. I thought I'd bring you a little economic overview about the Baxter project and how the legislation we passed last session, where we eliminated the sales tax on energy used in the manufacturing by manufacturers in the state of Georgia, has yielded enormous economic opportunity for us, and the ability to bring jobs in, like specifically the Baxter project. I've gotten some information pulled together from the Georgia Department of Economic Development, from our legislative liaison with Baxter International, and also Dr. Flora Tidings, who's the president of Athens Tech. So as far as job creation is concerned, I think the most underreported piece of legislation that we passed this year was where, through Governor Deal's leadership, where the legislature lowered the hurdle for qualifying for a HOOP grant to be able to go to our technical colleges from 3.0 down to 2.0. That's hugely important to economic development. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about why I feel like it is in a few minutes. First of all, I want to give you a few facts about the Walton economy. The bad news is we're still sitting at about 8.5% unemployment in the county. The good news is that's down 16% from what it was the year before, when it was about 10.1%. And it is trending up, it's looking better. And right now we have about 37,500 jobs in Walton County. And again, the bad news is only about 2,000 of those jobs are manufacturing jobs. Manufacturing jobs have an average weekly payroll in Walton County of $889. When you do quick math on that, that translates to approximately a $45,000 a year annual salary, which is much higher than the average per capita wages we have in the county of $32,000. So it's obvious that where the money is manufacturing in Georgia. And I'm pleased to report that we got a legislature led in the House by Speaker David Ralston, in the Senate by Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, and obviously our chief cheerleader for Georgia, our executive officer, Governor Nathan Deal, has just done a fabulous job of getting the big picture of how important job creation is for Georgia. So, since Governor Deal took office, the Georgia Department of Economic Development has announced locations for expansions representing almost $13 billion in new investment in infrastructure in the state. It's yielded over 62,000 new, either expanding our additional workforce or bringing new jobs to the state. The most stellar success story in his tenure to date is the Baxter International Project down in Social Circle. It is going to be a state-of-the-art. For those of you that don't know exactly, you've heard about it, but if you don't know exactly what it's going to do, it will be a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility which will manufacture biological medications that will include immunoglobulin therapy for patients with immune deficiencies and other products for critical care, trauma, and burn patients. It will be manufactured out of whole human blood. It will be very high-tech jobs. We're well aware the projected over when they get fully ramped up in 2018, and the reason for the long delay on that is all the steps of FDA approval that we have to go through. There'll be approximately 1,500 jobs with a median annual salary of over $60,000 per job. By year end, the legislative liaison told me this morning that we expect to have 100 direct Baxter jobs on site and working by this calendar year end. And they gave me this morning's construction update. They report that site clearing is substantially complete and the mass excavation is complete. Foundation work is well underway and they've had the first concrete pour. They report again that this is a multi-year project with peak of about 1,800 construction jobs, which will include the building of 3 main manufacturing buildings, including the support buildings, which will have a total over 1 million square feet, which will be fabulous to our tax base for the 4 counties involved in the park over the next coming years. But what really helps us get these jobs statewide is having a qualified workforce. And what that, in getting back to the legislation, that I think is very important is when Governor Deal lowered the technical requirement for GPA from 3.0 to 2.0, is going to mean more of our kids kids and young adults have access to our technical college system where they can get qualified to get these manufacturing jobs. Our technical college system, partnering with our fabulously successful Quick Start program with state development a number of years back, yields, it's a very attractive package to recruit and retain jobs in Georgia. I spoke to Dr. Tidings this morning, and she gave me an update on the new $14 million training facility that will be down at the 4-county park. This will be a state of Georgia project specifically geared for the Quick Start program. Our Athens Tech kids, or I keep saying kids, students over at the Walton campus that choose to get an associate's degree in bioscience, they can get a 2-year degree over there. There's only about 30 students in that curriculum right now, but Dr. Tidings reports that it will be up to 200 when she's in full capacity. But for any of them that are hired by Baxter, they will go down to the Quick Start program where in the new state-of-the-art 50,000 square foot building, which incidentally the contract was let this week, a national construction firm by the name of, I forgot the name of it, Whiting Turner. The contract's been let to them. I understand it's a beautiful state-of-the-art facility, but that's where the new hires will go to be specifically trained on Baxter equipment, using Baxter protocols, and exposed to the Baxter culture and way of doing things, where they'll be factory floor ready once they leave that facility to go straight to work and earn their paycheck. So, real quickly, that's a quick overview of piece of legislation that's very important specifically to Walton County, and I'd like to report that I think that we are working with my fellow legislators, and I really commend Tom Kirby on his work. Senator Burt Jones is new to our delegation this year. That I think we really are getting and trying to establish a low tax, business-friendly atmosphere, concentrated on the important things that matter, specifically our educational system, that's going to yield higher paying Georgia jobs and benefit all of us. And so, thank you for the opportunity to be able to report to y'all today.
right, next we have Representative Tom Kirby. Tom Kirby was elected in the special election in March of 2012, re-elected for the second term in November of 2012. He serves as Secretary of the Industry and Labor Committee, Secretary of the Human Relations and Aging Committee, and is a member of the Small Business Development Committee and the Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee. Wow, lots of committees. And please help me welcome Representative Kirby.
Well, thank you, Meredith, and it is a pleasure to be with you here today. First off, I do need your help. I've got to work on a new nickname. With Bruce, Bert, and Bill, I feel left out of the Killer Bee versus Walton County, so we got to work on that. We had a good legislative session. First thing we've got to do, of course, our one constitutional requirement is a budget. That's the only thing we have to do as your General Assembly is pass a budget. We actually do two budgets. The amended year 2013 budget was probably one of the simpler budgets to go through. Revenue estimates were not as high as we projected the year before. The governor had already sent out word to the agencies for pretty much a 3% reduction across the board, other than education and a few other things that didn't need to be cut. And that budget actually went through very simple. As Appropriations Chairman England said, when all you can do is tell everybody no, it makes it a really easy process. But in the 2014 budget, it's $19.9 billion. I have a young man, one of the youngest members of the House that's next to me, and he was just elected. And I tried to impress on him, with one push of the button, you just voted to spend $19.9 billion of the taxpayers' money. And that's a huge responsibility. But the good news is, in 2009, our state budget was a little over $21 billion. When we make cuts in Atlanta, it's not like in Washington. We're not cutting the amount of an increase. We're actually reducing how much money we're spending. And with 1 million more people in the state than there were in 2009, our per capita spending as a state government of your money is down to approximately 1991 levels. Not all painless. We get lots of emails that people want more and like to have more, and some programs that certainly have some benefits, but we've got to be responsible to you and the taxpayers on every dime we spend. In the 2014 budget, the best thing we did was we were able to fully fund for the first time in several years QBE, or Quality Basic Education Formula funding. $146 million going into the K through 12 education. That's our QBE budget. We also have made some adjustments to QBE. That formula was so antiquated, there wasn't even any technology money in there. So we made some changes to the formula, so now we can fund technology, the computers, the infrastructure going on in the school systems, and then we were able to fully fund that. The other part, a big part of our budget that we don't talk about much, we talk about a balanced budget requirement, which we do have, but we do have debt as a state in the form of bonds. Our AAA bond rating by all three credit agencies, we're one of only 8 states that still maintain that AAA rating. As a matter of fact, 4 of them, not Georgia, were put on notice that they're in danger of losing at least one of the AAA ratings. A loss of 1A out of those 9 would result in an additional $45 million a year just in interest alone for the state of Georgia. So the work that not only we're doing now, but what has gone on before us to keep that AAA bond rating is extremely important for all the citizens to make sure we are staying AAA rated from all 3 agencies. A couple little bills that I worked on very diligently, and we had signing ceremonies at the governor's office yesterday. Senate Bill 62 doesn't look like much on paper, but what we did was we set up a joint House and Senate committee that will be overseeing the board and the Department of Community Health. And DCH is the second largest single entity or line item in our budget. And they have a lot of moving parts, a lot of dollars going into that. And this is kind of a follow-up to those sunset committees that we tried for everybody that Governor Deal vetoed from the previous session, but starting with one, and one of the larger ones, so we'll be able to look at every dime, and I think we'll see a lot of savings and find some ways that these committees will report back to the General Assembly every year to see what we can do to improve that. The other bill was House Bill 320. This grandfathered in our current inert landfills. recent EPD regulations passed in January basically would put the inert landfills out of business in the state of Georgia. And inert material that your yard waste, your concrete, asphalt has been chewed up. A lot of cities, municipalities had inert landfills where they would compost and give that compost to the citizens or sell it at a reduced value. And through a series of regulations and rule-making, EPD basically set them on a course. If you know 81 inert or 81 recycling, as they call themselves now up in District 114, 73 acres, according to EPD's numbers, that their permit would then cost them $400,000. They get $30 a truckload for a tandem dump truck with yard waste. When I met with them back last summer, I said, how can you make that math work? How are you doing anything to try to put them out of business? So we got that bill through. It wasn't easy. There was a lot of people working hard against it. We got it through. The governor signed it yesterday, and that's one I was really proud of. This is a 2-year cycle, and bills that weren't passed stay open, and a couple of them that are been out there in the news that you heard a lot about. House Bill 512, Senate Bill 101 is the gun bill. And there was actually a lot of gun bills, and on the House side, we rolled them all into one. And just give you the highlights of what we were doing and what's going to be coming up, because it will come back in January. Number one, it restores private property rights to churches. It allows the church to determine whether or not they allow a firearm concealed on there or not. It's not the state's job to do that. It's the church that makes that decision, like any other private property owner. On schools, the schools are in there. Schools are in current law right now, and I think a lot of people didn't realize this, that every school in the state of Georgia has the authority to designate anybody they want to carry at any and all school functions. What was added into the bill is some training, and he said, all right, if you're going to start allowing administrators or teachers to carry, we're going to have a training program available to make sure they know how to properly handle a firearm. The one part that was talked about probably the most was campus carry. If you look at the data of our campuses around the country, yes, there are problems in the matter that happened at Virginia Tech a few years ago, but for the most part, our campuses around the country look like a donut when it comes to crime. And that's the same thing we've seen a lot and heard a lot down at Georgia Tech. It's not right there in the campus buildings, it's that peripheral around the outside. And those of you like me that maybe have kids in school now, the biggest change I see is when we were in school, about 1 o'clock, you were back at your dorm or fraternity house and things got pretty quiet. Now, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning seems to be more of their norm. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, the only thing going on is the college kids out running around and people looking to do bad things. And it's that those places they go to eat and drink and things and party and socialize right off the edge of campus is where most of the problems are. The campus carry part of the bill wasn't going to allow weapons inside any dorms or fraternities, sorority houses, and no sporting events. It also, remember, you have to be 21 in Georgia to get a concealed carry permit, so it did not apply to very many students. So that was one that was probably the most bandied around back and forth. Late conference committee moved to have them look at some extra training for the students for campus carry, and I don't know whether that'll come back up again next year or not. The other part of that bill that had to deal with, from the Senate side, we're dealing with reciprocal agreements, making sure it's easier for us to have these reciprocal agreements with other states where people have concealed carry permits. And then an important part was our military men and women that have been honorably discharged, to make sure if they want to get a concealed carry permit before they turn 21, we would allow them to do that. If you've been over in Baghdad for 2 years, serving proudly in the United States military, you come back and you're honorably discharged here in Georgia and you're 20 years old and want to get a concealed carry permit, we thought that should be allowed. So one part that we did get a lot of emails on and dealing with the mental health part, the House version specifically, if somebody was involuntarily committed to a mental facility, it only dealt with the ability to get a concealed carry permit for 5 years. Didn't take away their right to own or keep firearms or long rifles. It just dealt with concealed carry. And I think we got a lot of emails about people thinking we were taking away Second Amendment rights. When concealed carry and Second Amendment rights are not the same thing. It's one thing to be able to maintain a long rifle or even a handgun in your own home for your own protection and everything that goes with our Second Amendment rights. concealed carry permits is a different thing, and we were only talking about people involuntarily committed to a mental facility that at least wait 5 years after they got a clean bill of health before they got that concealed carry permit. So that was all the gun bills, and there's probably a few more little things in there. And that'll be carried over, and it'll come back up in January. And then the last one I want to talk about is House Bill 688 that I introduced on day 40. This is the Georgia Fair Taxation Act. Representative Williamson, one of the co-sponsors, we actually have over 25% of the House co-sponsored this bill. It is modeled after the fair tax in Washington, D.C. to eliminate income tax in the state of Georgia. As an economic driver, working with Professor Reese at Georgia Tech, one of the leading economists in the country on state taxes, we can start projecting out the economic impact, the ability to attract businesses to compete with Florida, Tennessee, Texas, and all these other states without an income tax. Can be a very big benefit for the state of Georgia. And in closing, the only other thing I'd say is we live in a soundbite world today. You see sound bites on the 6 o'clock news. But what we do at the State House is all about the detail. And a lot of those sound bites don't give you a good, accurate picture. So if you ever got any questions, you ever got any concerns, you see where one of your senators or one of your representatives doesn't seem to be on the side of the issue that the news people think we should be on, give us a call, send us an email. We'll be happy to explain it, because what you'll find on line 500 is something that you don't want, we don't want. We're working hard to stop bad legislation more than we ever worked to pass good legislation. Thank you.
All right, next we have Senator Burt Jones. Senator Burt Jones represents Senate District 25, which includes Baldwin, Butts, Greene, Jasper, Morgan, and Putnam counties, along with portions of Bibb, Walton, and Jones counties. Senator Jones serves as Vice Chairman of the State Institutions and Properties Committee and is a member of the Insurance and Labor and Regulated Industries and Utilities Committees. Senator Jones was elected to the State Senate in 2012. Help me welcome Senator Jones.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you, Chamber of Commerce, for having me today. It is a pleasure to be here at the Walton County Monroe Country Club here. So our first time here. I actually see one of my old teammates right there, Matt Adcock. How you doing there, Matt? So it was funny. I walked in, I ran into Freddie Jones over there, who's working with the bank here locally. And of course, he was at the at the University of Georgia when I was in school there, and banging heads on the scout team sometimes with Matt over there. And Freddie looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" Kind of pointed at my tag. He goes, "You actually contributed to society now?" I said, "That's amazing." I said, "Yeah, amazing what can happen when you get married and have some children and everything. All of a sudden, responsibility will come kicking in pretty quick." So, but it is good to be here. I've enjoyed working with Representative Williamson and also Kirby. You should be proud to have them as your representation for Walton County. I know it's always good to have good local representation, and y'all can rest assured that y'all do have two representatives that have Walton County's interests at heart. And even Senator Cowser and I, we always brag about the great participation and turnout that you always see in Walton County. So it's good to have citizens that are involved and citizens that are concerned about what goes on in their county. And I think y'all should be commended for all that good hard work that y'all do in the chamber and other organizations. I know Tom hit on a bunch of topics right there, and we tried to get together, make sure we didn't bore y'all to death with what went on in the legislative process. And so I wanted to talk about some economic development tools that we felt like we got done at the State House this year that I think will be good for Georgia in the future here. As Representative Kirby said, the one thing that we are obligated to do as legislators, and the only thing we're obligated to do really constitutionally, is to pass a balanced budget. And we did do that again, and I'm very proud of that. I wish our friends in Washington could do that. I wish they could just get a budget, actually. But at any rate, but we'll worry about them at a later date. One of the things that when you get up there at the State House, you do realize that the state, even though it's not perfect, it is ran pretty conservative, and we do have pretty conservative leadership in both chambers and in the governor's office that I think is looking to try to make Georgia the best place in the country for people to come, live, work, and play. Forbes magazines even ranked Georgia as number 8 in the country as friendliest business states. And while that's good, that's a great accomplishment, we can do better. And I think our goal as legislators would be to get us to that number 1 spot in the country. And I know we're committed to do that. One of the tools that we passed this past legislative session was a bill called Invest Georgia. And this is a bill that our Lieutenant Governor, Casey Cagle, had really been working on the last 3 or 4 years. He put together a committee that actually Representative Williams served on because we're blessed in this state in the fact that we have some very good higher education institutions. And in those higher education institutions, we've had incubator companies that have been developed by our young scientists at Emory University, and it pains me to say Georgia Tech is our Georgia Institution of Technology, but you can't take anything away from the good work that they do. One of the problems we've been running into in recent years is these good high-paying technical jobs for either medical or energy or biotech, whatever, that have been created in these institutions. They have, in a lot of cases, and probably over 30 cases that we know in the last few years, we've lost these companies to other states. They were created here, they were developed here, but due to the fact that we didn't have a seed mechanism, a public-private partnership to try to help them help them grow as young developing companies, we lost them. And we lost them to states like Tennessee, we lost them to states like North Carolina, we lost them to states like California, New York. All these other states and within the country here had programs in place, much like what we've put in place this past legislative session called Invest Georgia. And it is just to try to develop high-paying technological jobs that will stay right here in Georgia and create obviously jobs for us and make us the technical wonder of the Southeast once again. So we were able to put that program together this past legislative session, and it is a program that is ongoing work in progress, but we are due to the fact that we were the only one in the Southeast, with the exception of Alabama, that had not put together a program like this. We felt it was a need and a good thing that could be developed for future businesses to say, hey, Georgia's serious about wanting to keep high-paying technical jobs for a broad range of industries, and so we were very excited about putting Georgia in the forefront of doing that. The other thing, which is always exciting to talk about, is a lot of y'all know that the movie industry has become a big industry here in the state of Georgia. Actually, we're number 3 in the country as far as film production is concerned. Only trailing California and New York right now. It's the 4th largest revenue producing industry in the state right now. It's generated over $3.1 billion in the last few years to the state of Georgia. And this past the tax incentive that we had given the film industry was due to sunset this upcoming year. Well, we decided to keep that moving forward as far as the film industry is concerned, and we extended that tax credit that we're giving to the film production. You can go all across the landscape. Just recently in Fayette County, a British company who do all the James Bond movies. I think it's called Pinewood Industries or Pinewood Incorporate Production, something like that. Bought a 287-acre tract of land over in Fayette County, and they are going to have their United States headquarters out of Fayetteville, Georgia. They're going to develop that entire property, and obviously when that kind of impact comes to a community, it brings jobs, it brings people that will shop in your shops and go to your restaurants and things of that nature, and it brings good paying jobs. The only thing I ran into and here closer to us is over in Covington. I'm sure y'all are very familiar with Newton County and the successes they've had in the film business. And I saw the city manager of Covington the other day, and I said, well, film business still good in Newton County? He said, yeah, it's still good. I said, the only problem with that film business in Covington? He said, what's that? I was like, you need to bring it down to District 25, and that includes Walton County. So, so those are two things that I wanted to touch on that I think are very business-friendly ventures that we did this year in the legislative session. We were excited about doing those, and I'm excited about continuing to represent this part of the country, or this part of the state, I should say. And I enjoy working with like I said, our two representatives and our state senator, other state senator, Bill Cowser, who had work and was unable to be here. But always know that even though I only represent Social Circle, Walnut Grove, and Jersey, if there's anything I can do for anybody in the county, please know that we have an open door. I have an open door policy, so just come see us anytime. Thank you for having me, and I hope you have a good afternoon. Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take some questions right now if anybody has any for any of our legislators over here. Don't be shy. I'm sure somebody has a question somewhere.
For those of you that didn't read between the lines, Bert did play football 4 years at the University of Georgia. I want to commend him on wearing his Georgia Tech tie. He told us about the technology initiatives he was working on at the Capitol for us. So.
Observation. All right. So, did anybody have any questions? I think that Senator Cowser is.
He
get him.
He must have got tied up in court.
Yeah.
Evidently, he's not good.
And we'll try to catch up with him at another meeting. So we'll move on. And thank you all for being here today. We appreciate the updates. Hope to see y'all at further luncheons throughout the year. We're going to move on to the Member of the Month Award, and the Member of the Month Awards can be presented by Kristen Williams, who's the county executive for Comcast, and they are, as I mentioned at the beginning, another sponsor for today's luncheon. And again, we do appreciate our sponsors very much. We're glad you can be here and want to come present the award. Great.
Hello, thank you guys. First, we want to thank you, Terry, for letting us be the sponsor today. I have a couple other representatives from Comcast. If you would like to stand up and introduce yourself.
I'm Tracy Stroud. I work with Kristen.
Hey, Michael Boyd at Comcast Business Services in Atlanta.
And I'm going to pause and hand it back over.
I'm fine.
Okay. You can have some more water. I just wanted to, I'm Kristen Williams, and I'm with Comcast Spotlight, and Tracy and I represent the advertising division of Comcast Spotlight, and basically what that means is we put your business on the television. Tracy and I stand on this side of the camera, and we shoot your business, or you, or your grandkids, whoever you want to promote. And we serve all of the area of Walton County on into Gwinnett County and over to Athens. And Michael, as he said, he represents the business side, so if you're for your businesses, you guys are looking for phone, internet service, then Michael is your person to go to. And we will hang around afterwards if you guys have any questions about our business, but most important, let's present the Member of the Month. The Member of the Month award is voted on by the Business Council from nominations received from the membership. The criteria for selection for this award is as follows. Nominees must be of the retail, manufacturing, distribution, service, or professional sector. The member must be a member in good standing of the Walton County Chamber of Commerce and have been in business for a minimum of 2 years. Member must project a positive image. And the nominee must have donated time, talent, and resources for the betterment of our community via projects, civic organizations, etc. And you guys will see this member has definitely qualified for all of that. Our May Member of the Month meets all of these criteria, and I know you will agree has changed the face of the area of Walton County in the city of Monroe. Purchasing the property in 2007, this local business owner has worked to preserve Monroe's history. Today, we are recognizing Paul Rosenthal of Monroe Cotton Mills. Since purchasing the property, he and his partners have renovated a facility that was deteriorated and unattractive into a thriving antique business, which I'm happy to say advertises for this as well. And most recently, the opening of the engine room special events facility. Their investment is bringing in many visitors to Walton County. In 2010, Paul donated the use of the space for our annual business and community expo event. In 2011, he donated the new engine room to the Boys and Girls Club of Walton County for a fundraising event. And just recently, in January of 2013, he donated the rental fee of the engine room for our annual banquet. In addition to this business, Paul is an attorney practicing with Preston and Malcolm. We are proud to present our May Member of the Month to a very deserving business, Monroe Cotton Mills. Paul Rosenthal, will you please come up and accept this award at this time?
Thank you, Paul. We do appreciate your support of the chamber. And if you haven't been over to, you didn't come to our annual meeting in January, you missed out because it is a beautiful facility. Well, we're going to go ahead and go to Bill Cowser. So we have Senator Bill Cowser, who has represented the 46th Senate District since his election in 2006. This district includes most of Walton, all of Oconee, and a large portion of Clark County. He is chairman of the Higher Education Committee and also serves on Appropriations, Judiciary, and Natural Resources and the Environment Committees. Please help me welcome Senator Bill Cowser.
Sorry to come rushing in here this late. You know, we talk about us being citizen legislators. That's kind of a strength and a weakness of this job. The great thing is it brings people from all different backgrounds and different professions and real world experience to the table in government, so we know how these laws impact people and impact business. And you get doctors and lawyers and insurance guys, stockbrokers, all kind of different professions come to the table, and it helps us craft laws that are good for the state of Georgia. So this morning I had to be in Atlanta Municipal Court at 8 a.m., which is about an hour and a half drive from Athens in the morning traffic. And from there I went to Tequila and took a doctor's deposition, which I'm sitting there watching my watch saying, please talk fast, I gotta get down my road. May have broken a few speed laws on my way to get here, but I'm glad I at least got here before we ended. I was going to talk about two things. We have the greatest delegation. We all get along so well and work together smoothly to get bills passed. Bruce, did you mention anything about that magistrate court bill?
I did.
We did. We had one issue that came up that was local legislation. All the local members of the delegation have to agree, and we did some tweaking, had to tweak the city charter of Monroe to change the magistrate court, and got through the House, and then we caught a glitch in it, and we got it in the Senate, worked that glitch out, and I mean, nobody else even realized any problems, and Bruce and I in particular on that worked, and Tom's, of course, always contributing. It was just really pleasant to work and do something like that. I love the Walton County delegation. The three different counties I represent all have different personalities represented, and you can just kind of imagine in Clark County, we've got a lot of internal bickering between the Democrats and Republicans that are representing that area, and we had just a knockdown drag out over our redistricting last year. And here in Walton County, it took us maybe 30 seconds to agree with what the commissioners wanted, and it was fair and was reasonable, and we just rolled right through. But sometimes you get into some hassles on that, but it's really a joy to work with Bruce and Tom on this local delegation. We talked before we got here about, subject matters to speak on, and they give me a hard time, but I talk too long sometimes. I take up all the subject matters, so I said, it's y'all's lucky day. You get to go first, and I'm gonna get there later. And then, what do y'all talk about? Whatever y'all want to do. They said, well, we're gonna make you talk about the ethics bill. That was probably our most controversial bill, so I'm happy to handle that today, and I'm happy to report that we did pass a great ethics bill this year. Up until now, Georgia has had absolutely no limits on what gifts or meals or benefits that lobbyists can give to a legislator. And the theory or the strategy that Georgia used, instead of creating limits on it, was to require it all to be disclosed. So anytime a lobbyist were to provide you with a ticket to something, or a meal, or a beverage, or anything of value, they have to report it with the Ethics Commission, the date, what they spent the money for, what was talked about at that meeting, and who was present, where you were, those type of things. And the idea is, as long as the public understands what people are receiving, then they can judge you on that and can vote you out of office if they think you're a crook selling your vote for a meal or a ball game ticket or whatever. Over the last year or so, some public interest groups started complaining about that and saying there are a lot of states that have limits, and really it's kind of crazy. If somebody wanted to, they could give me a new Mercedes and say, oh, I don't expect Counselor to vote our way on that. We're just doing that because he's doing a good job. Trips or anything, and some things hit the press that made the voters of Georgia start thinking, don't we want some control, some limit there? You might have a reasonable amount you can spend that's not going to buy a vote, but we don't want to be thought of as compromised or for sale. And so we put it on the ballot in both the Democratic primary and the Republican primary last July to ask the voters, do you want some restrictions? And in the Republican ballot, it said, should we limit gifts to $100 per gift or meal? You can have a pretty nice meal for up to $100. I don't think anybody needs or wants more than that. Even in Atlanta, when you're over there. 87% of Republican voters said we ought to have some kind of reasonable limit on that. So we heard that loud and clear. And when we went back in session this year on the very first day, before lunchtime that day, the Senate had passed a rule that governs our conduct in the Senate that we would not accept anything worth more than $100. And we've lived by that during the entire session. The House passed a bill that was even stricter than that Senate rule that said they would take 0 gifts. And that went through the committee process in the House and through the Senate. And on the very last day, compromises were reached on everything where we imposed a limit of $75 per meal or gift of any type. So you cannot receive anything of greater value than that. And it was a compromise of sorts. It would suit me fine if it was 0. But it is to assure the public that our state legislators, state senators are not for sale, are not selling their votes, and they're doing what they think is best for their district rather than their own benefit of any type. There are a few exceptions. If you had a reception for the entire General Assembly, sometimes the Chamber of Commerce from different places will do that, and you invite everybody, well, it's obvious you're not trying to single somebody out to influence their vote, then you may do that. If you like to. If there's a conference within the state of Georgia that's relating to your legislative duties, sometimes the Chamber of Commerce has a thing down at St. Simon's in a couple of weeks, and they will invite certain legislators to speak on different subjects. Well, if they do, most of us are probably not going to absorb that expense on our own to travel down and stay at the King and Prince or wherever on your own dime if they wouldn't at least pay for your room or your meal. So there's an exception. If you're at a conference of some sort, it's educational or helps you do your job as a legislator, then your expenses for that can be paid, but only if it's in the United States. Can't go on any kind of overseas trips and say that's for any kind of educational benefit. If you were to take an entire committee out, you're allowed to do that. But no sporting events tickets, no golf or other leisure activities, those type of things are now not permitted. It also tightened up the rules on who has to report. These things all still have to be reported. There's just a maximum amount on them now. And anybody that lobbies the legislature for pay, that's their job to do that, has to be registered as a lobbyist and must report anything. And even if you're doing lobbying for other public interest organizations, will say, but you're being reimbursed for up to $250 a year of expenses, you must register and you've got to report what's going on so this can all be controlled. And we'll keep the transparency, which was our strength in the past, but now also add to that a limit. And I was very pleased, it would suit me, and I think most of our delegation, if that was a little tighter, but that's sort of the art of compromise in politics. That's what we could get the votes to pass. And I think you might see in some future years us continue to tighten that down even more to give you the peace of mind and the satisfaction to know that your legislators are representing you. They're not in this for the money or any personal gain. It's all for the public good. So we were very happy about that bill and glad that we addressed that situation. I think it's a good example of the legislature hearing the public's voice and responding to it in a real positive manner. So we're looking forward to going forward with other legislative ideas next year. There's one last thing I'll mention, and then if there are any questions anybody has, we can take them. One of my greatest concerns has been on the federal level, this deficit spending, the national debt that we've been running up in just unprecedented amounts. It's now knocking on $17 billion. It's growing, $1 trillion. It's growing at $1 trillion a year, and it's just unprecedented in our history to have this type of debt that we're going to eventually have to pay. And we're just passing that on to future generations, basically, which is unfair. I read a stat someplace that every child born today has $42,000 in national debt that they owe on the day they're born. Every single person born in the United States. And that's just staggering. It's just like a credit card that we're paying for things on and handing that bill off to our kids and saying, oh, by the way, Junior, here's a bill, you're going to need to pay this at some point. And it's going to be carrying interest until then. That is not the way you run your household budgets. That's not the way anybody runs their business. And that's not the way the state of Georgia operates. We have a constitutional amendment that requires us to have a balanced budget in the state of Georgia. We never spend more money than we bring in tax revenues. There are very limited exceptions if you're building buildings or capital projects that you want to amortize over 20 years or more, but it can't be more than 5 to 7% of the entire state budget. And that's, you couldn't buy a new house and pay for it with a check up front, so it's these long-term assets is our only exception. So my point is, if we can do that on the state level, and 49 out of the 50 states have the same rule Georgia does, why can't we do that on the federal level? Our Constitution does not require it. So this year I introduced a bill that was to call for a convention of the states to create an amendment for a balanced budget that would have an exception only for national emergency. And it was identical to what's been done in 18 other states already. The U.S. Constitution allows you to amend that Constitution in two different ways. One is the United States Congress can propose an amendment and submit it to the states for ratification. It takes 3/4 of the states to ratify it. In this case, Congress has refused to do this. They won't balance their budget. In fact, for the last 4 years, they haven't even passed a budget. They just spend whatever they want to and run up debt because they're allowed to do that. And they won't pass an amendment to control their own spending. So the Constitution gives a second mechanism for doing that. If 2/3 of the states file an application like I have submitted in the Georgia legislature, calling upon a convention or a meeting of delegates from those states to propose an amendment, then you can also propose it that way. Still has to be ratified by 3/4 of the states, but these delegates from each state would go and come up with that. It's created that way, our Constitution, to give checks and balances on Congress when they fail to act, because this is a government of the Federation of States. And anybody that believes in the 10th Amendment and states' rights believe that Congress is representing us. So I've asked for that to be called upon nationwide, and there's a group that I've been working with that's pushing this in a lot of states to put pressure on Congress to either do it themselves or else we'll prepare and draft that amendment and send it out for ratification on our own. It did pass the Senate. It got out of committee in the House, but never got to their floor during this session. We have a biennial 2-year session, so I'll be starting right back where we left off this coming January in the House and started through the Senate, trying to get them to push that to the floor to get a vote, because I think it will pass pretty easily. It's not a partisan issue at all. It's a common sense, good fiscal management, sound government bill, and I'm hoping to see that passes. So I just wanted to talk about that because that's something that we're all working together for. Gentlemen, I will step down and we'll take any questions if anybody's wanted. If not, I hope I'm through in time so I didn't You just have to work late.